Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and so thrilled to be joined by today's wonderful guest, Justine Lupe, to talk all about HBO's Succession. And I wanted to start by talking about Willa's relationship with agency that she has within this relationship dynamic with Connor, because it's so interesting to watch this arc of what that relationship is, what it's become, and how kind of she ends up further and further entrenched within the world and within this family. And I was interested for you in how you've traversed her self-relationship with agency, going from somewhere where she didn't rely on any aspects of this relationship to the fact where now she is kind of more entrenched and taking a little bit more from it, as you do when you're with someone for that long, and how you've kind of passed that into your performance throughout the seasons.
Yeah, it's so interesting because she really did start out as the black sheep of this family. It was wild watching back season one and seeing the way that she kind of is just relentlessly disrespected by all these members of the family and how untouchable she is. And I've found that the North Star of trying to guide my way through this is just one step in front of the other in terms of seeing what is happening with Connor and Willa and their dynamic. And I think the thing that's that has led their relationship to where it is a mix of her becoming more endeared to him and also the pride that she has for their relationship, that she is a prideful person. You see the way that she, is kind of delusionally proud of her theatrical, creation, and you kind of see her becoming proud of their relationship and being kind of protective of it. And the way that she steps in slowly but surely over the course of this season in particular, I mean, I'd say starting with his speech, where she takes care of his funeral speech and she's like, okay, listen, we are a unit and I'm going to help protect you in the way that you've kind of enabled me. And the way that it's evolved into this season where she kind of feels like this lioness mama bear type of thing. And I think he's her protectiveness of their relationship is the thing that's kind of guided her closer and closer into this family. It's weird though, because I don't feel like there's any kind of, I'm kind of curious to see what her getting more entrenched in this family evokes in terms of what materializes out of it. Because right now it feels like she's kind of floating on the periphery throughout this whole season, and she dips in when she needs to help Connor, but I don't really feel her diving into the family dynamics ever. So I'm kind of excited to see, if she ever utilizes her access to this family, or if she's just purely in it for this relationship. Does that make sense?
It does, and it's really interesting to see the way that she's an incredibly observational character who often is just kind of standing back and watching what's happening between the siblings with this family and just kind of really reading it. And like you said, you kind of don't know whether she's taking that and is going to kind of do anything with it. But I was interested in terms of filming those scenes and those moments where she really is just observing everything around her, kind of how you approach a lot of those moments performance-wise.
I mean, I always kind of keep what Willa's perspective would be throughout those scenes, how she would be internalizing it. But, someone said this at the very beginning of this season. It was an incredible director that we had for the Thanksgiving episode, Arkin, I believe. And he said, Willa is the best date ever. She's someone who's not phased. Her job is not, because I remember I walked into the Thanksgiving scene and I was watching this family and the way that they treated each other. And I was reacting as if I was a woman who had been brought to this family without thinking, oh no, she is a high-end escort. That's her background. She knows how to navigate this kind of any dynamic with incredible grace. And so I kind of, and it was a real turning moment for me. It's oh yeah, she's not thrown by this because she's kind of that her job is to not be thrown by this and to be the best girlfriend. So I've kind of tried to keep that feeling, that posture throughout the whole 3 seasons is like that she's kind of unflappable, kind of unfazed. Her job is to be there for Connor. And so every kind of scene where she's just like fly on the walling it, her job is to kind of is just that, like not to get involved, not to get, get to things to get messy, just, be the girlfriend that she needs to be to her partner. And then there's moments where you kind of see her peek in and step in a different way, but that's like kind of the way that I've played it the whole way through. And those scenes are just so much fun to shoot because every single person on that show is just like so immensely talented that I also just have such a fun time just being there as Willa and being a fly on the wall.
Was that detail as well when it comes to her background and her experience at navigating every type of scenario a key component to the way that you were playing the episode in this season where, she's being hit on by a political figure and she knows that she can't call him out for anything. So she finds that way of kind of, how do I glide through this situation and not cause any ripple effect and yet also not engage with this at the same time, which is a really artful space that she has to find in that moment.
Yeah, no, I feel like that moment in particular was a really clear callback to the woman that she was pre-meeting Connor, where it's like, I know how to handle men like this, because she probably had to do quite a bit of that pre-Connor, that there is like a little bit of a slap on the wrist, but like, I'm going to like keep this like lively and like cordial and like move through it and also not give you what you want in this moment, Stephen Root, like it was a really interesting scene to get because you also see, Connor kind of leaning into knowing that that's who she was before. And there is a little bit of like him exploiting that past that she has and her having to be like, yo, dude, no, that's not where we're at right now. I'm not like, I don't want to be your, what did they say? I don't want to donate my body to political science. So yeah, I really, it's funny that you picked up on that too, because I definitely thought that was like a very clear kind of callback to who Willa was.
Yeah. And with the fact that she does so immediately call Connor out on it when he's kind of offering her up a little bit almost, do you always look at it with what you were saying before about how she doesn't kind of jump in when it's the family dynamic, but that she still does always have that kind of preservation of self and autonomy of self, that like the line is, okay, I might not say anything to this person, but the moment that it's just the two of us, that's when I'm going to bring it up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it also speaks to what their dynamic is, that she does feel comfortable now being like completely open with him about how she's feeling about any particular situation. And you kind of see the transparency in their private life, So yeah.
I also love a lot of the comedic asides and kind of spaces where she starts to have these little acerbic one-liners as well, like at Kendall's birthday party when she learns that there's an immersive theater element and she just kind of almost to herself is like, I could have consulted or something.
It's so good. I know. She's just it's really great because I feel like Connor has, such a level of, it's interesting because you think of it as delusion, but then there is like some piece of it that you're like, well, Donald Trump is our president. How delusional is this guy really, but Willa has the same level of delusion. She's kind of matched with him in some way, where it's like, the fact that she's walking in there, like so confidently saying like, someone should have called me. It's like, so crazy. It's so crazy.
Is it easy to figure out what the delivery is that you want for a line like that? Because there's a lot of different ways that she could respond. She could have said it kind of in a very jokingly way. There was that kind of undercurrent of like everything from season 2 carrying forth in that delivery. And was that something where you went in knowing for that and a lot of the other one-liners what that delivery is going to be? Or is it about finding it on the day and really reading the scene in the moment?
They played with a bunch of different lines. Which is what they do quite a bit on Succession, is they have an incredible room of writers who are on set, throwing out alts, trying all kinds of things. So I don't think I actually am not quite even sure that I don't even know if that one was originally written into the script, or if it's just something they kind of like threw at me at the last minute. But I do know that Willa's consistently taken her art very seriously. There's like no jokiness about it, you know, like even in the first season where she's like, art is more important than anything, like in that at the wedding, like she's very hard on her sleeve, very self-serious when it comes to theater. So when I read that line, I just like went straight to like dead serious. Someone should have called me. Like what, like immersive theater. Why didn't I get the call, you know? And didn't even consider taking it as like a joke, you know?
And that relationship with creativity for her is so interesting in all the different facets that you get to explore. And even the moment where she's at the political like fundraiser event and she's like, oh, I can just write my play on my phone. And it both shows a dedication and kind of a naivety to like, there's all this noise in this room right now, but I totally believe that I'm going to write a masterpiece on my cell phone right in this moment. And so how have you always constructed and thought about the way that she works her process and her relationship with herself as an artist?
That's what I mean. I think she just takes everything so dead seriously. Like, I think she really cares. I think she is very proud. I think and that's the other thing is I do think that she's so involved that there's a lack of self-consciousness. Like there's no registering like how weird it is that you in the middle of this thing are typing your phone and you say it outright, very like deadpan, because she's like wholeheartedly involved in her creativity and her craft. There's like no self-awareness of like, this might come off like, you know, in any way besides this is just a matter of fact. Like same thing with the speech that she made at the theater, you know, there's like such a level of there's such a lack of awareness as to how people might perceive her, that and it's what I love about the character. She's just kind of like, does what she wants. And there's very little room for worrying about what other people think, with the exception of reading those reviews, you know. And then
there's the moments. Sorry.
No. And then it was kind of this amazing, fantastic, like glimpse of an ego burn in this woman. And like, you just see her kind of like become a little girl all of a sudden, like all these things that she's built into like her persona, and like the kind of untouchableness that you've seen her carry herself with through the entire 2 seasons with the Roys and with her theatrical debut. You see it kind of hit her for the first time and get through the armor. And that was just like such a, I don't know. I felt for her. It's funny. People were horrified by the throwing of the iPad off the boat. And I was just like, poor Willa, you know.
You also get to kind of revisit those cracks in the veneer as well in different moments, like when it's being suggested to her, like, oh, you should take all the really bad reviews and use this for marketing. And then you just see the internalized processing of being reminded of it. Or when she says, was it the thing about, oh, I've decided I don't want to be like a serious art house theater director. Like, well, I think the audience decided that for you.
Not really interested in commercial theater anymore. And he's like, I think the audience decided that for you, honey.
And is that kind of the same thing that you were just saying, where it's really just that kind of childlike element and kind of really just breaking her down to such a granular level in those moments, because there's such internalized inflections in your performance and delivery in those instances?
Yeah, I think that, you know, the iPad was just like such a big reveal of like just shame, like the shame spiral, it was such an intense reaction. And every other little, every other crack in the veneer, as you said it, I feel like it's just a little glimpse, just a little like flicker of like seeing what's happening, but the words she's saying don't reveal this anymore. You know what I mean? Like when he brings up the bad reviews, she's like, thanks, Con. Yeah, that sounds great. You know, but you see that she's like there's something that she's dying inside, that there's like a level of like, of just that she's been crushed a little bit by this. And that being said, I kind of love that she's just like right back on the horse, and she gets back up, and she kind of even becomes, I don't know. I see her in this season as being a little bit, is even more strong than she was before. Like there is like kind of like a phoenix quality to her, you know. So.
Do you find overall that performance-wise, stylistically, it really allows you to lean into a lot of those internalized spaces and where you're capturing your performance? Because like you're saying, it's a lot of these instances that we're talking about are like inflections that we see. She doesn't even say anything, and then she kind of snaps herself back. And so there's a lot of really great internalized processing that we get to see in your performance in watching the show.
Well, it's really nice. Yeah, I feel like, you know, one of the wonderful parts of the way that they shoot this show is that there's always a camera kind of, there's very little premeditated choreography. It's a lot of just like, don't tell us where you're going to go. And these camera ops are absolutely fantastic. They're just so wildly talented. And part of what that creates is a feeling of I'm always on, and I have to be completely invested in every single moment of what's happening. So you really do have to like sit through all the like all of the quiet spaces and internalize those moments, kind of create whatever is going on, like really listen and really think about what this character might be thinking. And you know, ideally you do that with every show that you're on, you know, even when you're off camera, but there is something about how every single moment, even the moments of listening, are really alive, that makes you, that remind you that there's a lot going on. And the other thing is Willa and Connor, it's like their dialogue is very spare. So there's a lot of room to kind of try and fill in the in-between moments, to connect the dots through the silence, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah. And with Connor's dynamic within his sibling rivalry, do you kind of, what's the effect that you look at and the impact on Willa, depending on kind of like where he's doing, you know, the moments where he's receiving a little bit more favor, how that impacts her when he's very much kind of pushed outside of the group and pushed out by Logan? Like, how do you view where his space is within that family dynamic as impacting her, if it does at all for you?
I think that Willa has started to see her and Connor as a unit. And she, like I said, she's a very prideful person. And so there is like there's a protective element that she has, where, so I think that she's very tied to making sure that he's okay. I also think she's endeared to his emotional state, and like feels somewhat responsible for making sure that he's okay. So you see her kind of step in these moments to make sure that he's treated with the same kind of respect, or, you know, the same level of importance that the other siblings get. Like that moment in the first episode where she calls Logan, Connor gets forgotten by Logan, and she goes, Logan, what about Con? You know, there is like kind of a looking out for his part in this dynamic. And I almost think, you know, even the engagement in itself, like her saying yes, it spawned out of her seeing like my partner is suffering through this moment, and she's seeing him in this moment of real vulnerability and feeling kind of crushed, and she is like, you're a good man, and you feel her kind of attachment to him. So I do feel like there is it's funny because I don't think it's even an ambitious, an ambition thing where she really wants him to take over some stake in the family. I think it's more just about, he deserves to have the same amount of respect that every other member of this family has. And if he can't do it for himself, maybe I can help be that piece that helps him push himself forward, you know, into this, into the respect that he deserves. I don't know. That's kind of my feeling. It's like that she's like, I'm proud, and I'm going to make sure that you're coming with me. Like you can't be screwed with. in this same way that you've been screwed with before. And if it means that I step in and help you out, then let's do it.
Yeah.
You know?
And I love that you were mentioning the engagement because that's such a rich scene for Willa, character wise, even down to, going back to that conversation about agency with her as a character. He's proposing to her in public and she knows that his entire family and people that he knows are surrounding them, and she's still like, no, I need the time for me to think about this for a moment. And for you, what were the hesitations and pauses that you felt were the most important to her and key for her as a character in that instance?
I think she really does care for Connor, but I think that this was like shocking. And I think that it was like, she was on a totally different wavelength where she's like, hey, listen, I don't have to be like, if this is becoming a problem for us, I can go back underground. We can go back to the way that it was. I don't think she expected this at all. And as much as she cares for him, I think that, I mean, it's a huge thing asking someone to marry them. So I took it as like her truly like needing a beat to like think through like, what am I actually doing? And on top of that, she's in the middle of this like crazy shit show of a wedding with all these siblings and all this thing. It's a lot to process. Like I think about what it must be like to be someone who's not part of this family dynamic and is not like, did not grow up in it, watching it, like being thrown into it and kind of being like, what am I getting myself into? Like this family is nuts, and there is a part of her that's like kind of immune to all of it. But I do think in that moment where she would ideally sign on to being a Willa Roy, it's a big ask. So, I think she earnestly needed to have a think.
Was for you as well, was there any pause in the fact that, he's saying really lovely things to her, but then he's also kind of in essence making it a business transaction, and the words that he says to her also include, oh, and this will make me the perfect candidate for presidency, and it's all about his political ambitions as well.
Yes, but their whole relationship has been on the table, transactional from the very beginning. So I have a feeling that didn't throw her too much. I mean, it throws the viewer because it's just like so bizarre and cringy, but I do feel like Willa, that's been most of their conversations on camera have been these like, let's figure out, what are we? What will you do this? Will you do that? Like, if I do this, will you pay for my play? If I'm your girlfriend, will you support my life? Like that's the thing that has kind of like that launched this whole relationship. So I feel like she was probably a little bit unfazed because that's the way that both of them have operated since square one, Yeah. It's another one of those things where there's been several moments in this, in listening to how people receive it, where like, because I'm in the mind space of like Willa, I'm like shocked that people feel the way they feel. Like I was just talking to me, or the thing that I referenced earlier with Amanda, my PR, like representative, she said she was horrified by me throwing the iPad off the ship. And a lot of people have said that, but you don't think that way as Willa, so it's kind of shocking to see the way that people receive things. And again, everyone was like, ugh, with that whole, like, this is a PR move. And they think that maybe this is a good idea for me to marry you. But I think Will is just like, oh yeah, this is our vocabulary,
I was interested in asking about a scene that you filmed that was one of those conversations between the two of them about what their relationship is and kind of where they see things shifting and what they want it to be. Because you mentioned that you filmed a scene where they were having a lot of pivotal conversations about that didn't end up making it into the show. And so I was interested in what the dynamics of that scene were and like how it helped you when it came to navigating a lot of her responses to that evolution in the last few episodes.
Yeah, I think it's so funny because it was a scene that was just kind of like them saying like, where are we right now? And the scene was left at like, I really care about you. Like, I really care about you. I don't know what this is. Like, I'm still trying to figure out what this is. And that being said, I really I didn't know if I was going to like you, but I do. And if anything, it was kind of this amazing, like when you think back on it, it's like this, like, it was as if we were given this little moment of an acting exercise where we were given a little bit of like a history bubble that we could play around with, that we could remember, that we could like anchor ourselves in, that nobody else got to see. but that we knew it happened, so that when we get to this proposal, there is that kind of history, that knowledge of that moment that nobody else got to see, but that we kind of played out, and that was like in our molecular understanding of what their relationship dynamic was. And it was just a tender scene, you know, and it came right before the coat moment. So yeah, it's cool to have these, you know, there's a lot of this in this show, these moments that we like actually get to flush out. And then because things are just written way too, you know, because there's only so much time that they have with each of these episodes, and there is a momentum that needs to be serviced. Some of these things get cut out, but it's cool as an actor to still have the memory of them, you know.
And then I wanted to talk about her acceptance of the proposal as well, because it was such a great delivery, you know, when she's just like, fuck it.
Yeah.
But then the fact that it continues and there's like 5 or 6 more fuck it's, and every single one has a different meaning and a different intonation. I was just interested in the journey for you of filming that particular moment and finding the different intonations and different responses that she has within herself at that moment.
It was just really fun. I mean, I don't remember, you know, all the different, like the different kinds of fuck it, but I do know that I remember like it feeling like moment to moment, because of what Alan was giving me and because of the way that the scene kind of flowed into the car. There was a lot of opportunity for Willa to be like processing the fuck it's in different ways as she said it. And then I remember Lucy Preble, who was one of the writers, she came up to me after the third tape, and she was like, also just add in fuck it for life, or whatever, you know, like fuck it forever. I can't remember which one it was. And I remember it hitting me in a different way. Like the reality of fuck it forever. It's like it just hit in a real way. It's like, yeah, this is a fuck it forever moment. Like, we are married. We're going to get married. This is like a huge, like, well, let's see how this goes. And then it hit. And then the moment of her getting into the car is like her really like absorbing, okay, like I'm doing this, you know? And then it was kind of fun to play with like the aftermath of like Willa just getting like tossed, like just completely toasted in the background and crying through the wedding. And just like, the fact that it is not this like clean, like just 100% happy proposal, but that it kind of evolves into this existential crisis as well, you know, was really fun to play with.
It was such a brilliant character moment and such a brilliant performance moment. And I can't wait to see where this arc and your journey lead in the next season when we finally get there. Thank you so much for sharing all of this, Justine. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. And thanks for asking such great questions. It's fun to like work it out. You know, a lot of this stuff I've never talked about. So it's fun to talk through with you.